Pint of Thames, please. No one serving. Anyway, welcome to the Queen Vic pub here in Walford, the scene of much drama over the years. It's 1985, a year of change, culture and iconic moments, but for British television, 1985 marked the birth of a show that would capture the hearts and minds of millions, become a staple of BBC programming, and coin the phrase,
"Get out of my pub!"
Thanks, Peggy. Join me as we wish a happy 40th birthday to Eastenders. At a time when millions of soap fans were tuning into Coronation Street, Emmerdale Farm as it was back then, Crossroads and Brookside, all on ITV and Channel 4, the BBC were feeling left out, and in March 1983, BBC chiefs were cooking up ideas to produce a similar style programme to keep millions of viewers coming back every week for more. David Reid was head of series and serials at the BBC then, and he was tasked with making it happen. He gave a very vague brief to Julia Smith and Tony Holland, former writers for Z-Cars, who were given the go-ahead to make the magic happen. As all of the other soaps of the time were based in the North and in the Midlands, they saw a gap in the market for a working-class London theme, and so the concept of Eastenders was born. The designers recreated the East London set of Albert Square on the back lot of the BBC's Elstree studios at Boreham Wood. A new set has since replaced the original one, but it's only a few yards away from where it all started. And a fun fact for you, the set was built on top of what had been the German building site set of Auf Wiedersehen Pet, which was filmed there in 1983. BBC One was undergoing a rebrand, and Eastenders was a central part of the plan when it launched at 7 o'clock on February the 19th, 1985. The programme got off to a great start in the ratings as well, as the BBC had hoped for. 11.7 million people tuned in, and we were quickly hooked. These ratings very quickly rose, and by the end of February, 20 million people were tuning in every single week to find out the goings-on in East London's newest borough. Whereas other soaps had often had a cosy and comical feel, Eastenders set out to be more real in its portrayal of day-to-day life, and that included covering controversial subjects that had never been before portrayed on a soap, and in many cases on British television as a whole. This is something that's often given Eastenders a stigma of being too depressing and morbid. But was it really? Let's take a whistle-stop tour through the years from 1985 to 2025 and look at the various storylines and characters that defined the programme. The first episode didn't start in a very cheery mood. It featured the death of character Reg Cox, as we saw Den Watts, Ali Osman and Arthur Fowler breaking into 23 Albert Square in the episode's opening scenes, as they were concerned for Reg and found him dead in his chair. And the groundbreaking storylines continued. Within the first year, the programme dealt with the cot death of baby Hassan, the teenage pregnancy of Michelle Fowler with the much older Dirty Den Watts revealed as the father, and the attempted suicide of Den's wife Angie. As the programme reached its first anniversary, it was peaking at over 27 million viewers. The gritty and often controversial characters and storylines pre-Watershed was clearly working. 1986 was a strange year for music, as many TV themes and characters from TV shows had chart hits, and many of them came from Albert Square. Simon Wicks, played by Nick Berry, played a song called Every Loser Wins on the piano in the Queen Vic, and the song featured several times on the show throughout 1986. Shortly after, the song was released as a single, and spent 3 weeks at number 1. Letitia Dean and Paul Medford, who played Sharon and Kelvin, went to number 12 with their single Something Out of Nothing. But perhaps the cherry on the cake was Anita Dobson, who played Angie Watts. She put lyrics to the show's theme tune and released Anyone Can Fall in Love. And it reached number 4. Heaven knows how. Eastenders became famous for its iconic cliffhangers, and perhaps the first of those came in the Christmas episodes of 1986, when Den handed Angie divorce papers. The following episode became the only soap episode ever to peak at over 30 million viewers, a record that's never been broken. The edgy storylines continued through the 80s with Arthur Fowler's mental breakdown in 1986, then in 1989 a first on British television that made national headlines and spawned a barrage of complaints. The first mouth-to-mouth gay kiss. Characters Colin Russell and Guido Smith played out the scene in January. Later that same year, another iconic storyline played out, as Den, who was up to his neck in trouble with a criminal organisation called The Firm, was shot by a man concealing a gun inside a bunch of daffodils. He then falls in the canal, presumed dead. But he wasn't. Eastenders launched with a cast of memorable characters and played brilliantly by a superb cast, many of whom stayed in the programme for many years. Amongst them, Pauline Fowler, played by Wendy Richard, who came to the soap after many years of playing Miss Brahms in the sitcom Are You Being Served? Wendy played Pauline until 2006. Sharon Watts, played by Letitia Dean, was a main cast member through the 80s and a recurring character, making appearances right into the 2020s. And of course, Adam Woodyard, who has played Ian Beale since the very first episode, and on the show's 40th anniversary remains the only permanent original cast member. In amongst the serious storylines, there was a special double act on the programme that were always guaranteed to raise a smile. They were Dot Cotton and Ethel Skinner, who could often be found putting the world to rights as Dot puffed on a cigarette. Into the 90s, and the decade started with the introduction of a family that was about to change the square for good. Enter the Mitchells. Hardman brothers Phil and Grant, played by Steve McFadden and Ross Kemp, made their debut in February of 1990, with their sister Sam and mother Peggy later, although the character of Peggy didn't become regular until 1994, where Barbara Windsor took on the role. Dot Cotton was on cloud nine as she won £10,000 at the bingo, and to cap it all off, her wayward son Nasty Nick came back to see his mum. But he was only after her money and plotted to poison his mum to get his hands on the cash. Just one of the many devious stunts he played on her over the years. Another taboo subject was tackled in 1991 when Mark Fowler, played by ex-Grange Hill actor Todd Carty, announced to his parents on Boxing Day that he was HIV positive. This storyline aired at the height of the AIDS epidemic in the UK and shortly after the death of Queen frontman Freddie Mercury to the disease. Pat Butcher was another iconic character, and in 1992, after launching her new business venture, Pat Cabs, we watched as she was taken away by the police, arrested for a hit and run and driving over the limit. She went to prison for 6 months. Just 2 years later, Pat's husband Frank, played by comedian Mike Reid, he was in bother too, as he was up to his neck in debt and asked Phil Mitchell to torch his car garage, Frank's Autos. Other big storylines of the 90s saw Arthur Fowler wrongly imprisoned for fraud, Ian Beale getting shot by a hitman on the orders of his estranged wife Cindy, and Peggy Mitchell finding out she had breast cancer, another storyline that tackled a difficult subject head-on. It was all about the births and the deaths, as the 90s ended with Bianca Butcher giving birth to her son Liam in the Queen Vic, and Tiffany, played by Marty McCutcheon, hit by Frank Butcher's car when chasing Grant Mitchell and their daughter Courtney. We headed towards the noughties with the Mitchell brothers at war with each other. Phil found out about his brother Grant having a one-night stand with Phil's ex-wife Kathy Beale, who he wanted to get back with. The year 2000 saw the death of one of the original characters and the end of that famous partnership of Dot and Ethel. Fans were genuinely upset as viewers saw Ethel ask her best friend Dot help her to end her life as she suffered from terminal cancer. It was just one of many two-hander episodes over the years and one that drew one of the show's biggest audiences. In that same year, Sonia Jackson went into labour, even though she had no idea she was pregnant in the first place. Sonia initially thought she had just too many trips down the chip shop. 2001 saw some big storylines with the shooting of Phil Mitchell, Jim's memorable marriage proposal on the London Eye, and another uneasy subject, domestic violence. Little Mo was caught up in an abusive marriage with Trevor Morgan, who terrorised her behind closed doors. The situation came to a head as Little Mo hit him over the head with an iron before Trevor captured Mo in a hostage situation where he set the house alight and Trevor himself burned to death in the fire. Things took a surreal twist in 2003 with the return of one of the original characters who was believed to have been killed in 1989. Yes, Dirty Den Watts swaggered back to Albert Square as if he'd never been away. Many saw this as an act of desperation by the writers and likened it to the famous Bobby Ewing Back from the Dead scene in Dallas when he stepped out of the shower. Den's comeback was fairly short-lived, however, as in 2005 he was killed again as Chrissy hit him over the head with a doorstop and we see him lying on the floor of the Queen Vic. We think it was for good this time. Another cliffhanger came in the 2004 New Year's Day episode, literally as the unlikely couple of Barry and Janine's relationship came to a head on a cliff edge and started Janine's run of killings on the programme. She pushed Barry off a cliff in Scotland and left him to die. Christmas 2005 confirmed to the nation that going to Mo Harris's house for Christmas dinner is a very bad idea, as we see her trying to defrost her Christmas turkey in the bath. Another main character from launch day in 1985 died on Christmas Day 2006, as Pauline Fowler died of a brain hemorrhage and was seen lying in the snow in the Square Garden, ending Wendy Richer's 21-year association with the programme. And just when you thought it couldn't get any more sad, 2008 saw the death of poor old Wellard the dog as he was fed chocolate by Bianca Jackson and died of poisoning. I never watch TV shows or films where the dog dies. At the end of the noughties, Stacey Branning became one of the most prominent characters, and a storyline focusing on her bipolar condition resulted in some fantastic acting as the story and subsequent sectioning played out. It's 2010, a new decade, but the square is still full of problems, and September saw the Queen Vic go up in flames after Phil Mitchell accuses Peggy of loving the pub more than him, as he went through the cold turkey for drug addiction, leading Phil to burn down the pub. We saw another side to Ian Beale in 2012 as he suffered a breakdown and went missing for 4 months before eventually being found and brought back looking rather dishevelled. Alfie and Kat Moon were one of the Eastenders' power couples in the 2010s, and a skint Alfie set their house on fire to claim the insurance money, not realising that Kat was still upstairs, and leading to Alfie running back to save her. After years of scheming and treating his mother like dirt, nasty Nick Cotton finally got his comeuppance in 2015 when he took an overdose and Dot refused to get him help. Dot said that he needed to find peace with God. For the show's 30th birthday celebrations, another character came back from the dead as Kathy stepped out of a cab. This was becoming a habit. Into the 2020s, and we had a deja vu moment of Den and Angie back in 1986, when Linda Carter served divorce papers on Mick Carter. That brings us to 2025 and 40 years of births, marriages, deaths, horrific deaths, shooting deaths, old deaths, young deaths, and even dog deaths. One thing's for sure, I would not take a house in Albert Square for love nor money. You'd be safer living in midsummer, honestly. Anyway, that's it for this video. There's so much more we could cover, but we'd be here all day. So please pop your favourite Eastenders moments in the comments below and share your memories of the last 40 years of Albert Square. So happy 40th birthday to Eastenders, and here's to more death and destruction in the years to come. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you love all things yesteryear, please consider subscribing for notifications of more retro content through the years. Doesn't cost you a penny, and it helps push the channel out to more viewers. Thanks once again for watching, and I'll see you once again in the next one. Come on, there's no one serving here yet. I want a pint.